Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in central Iowa. John Hendrickson and myself here today, ready to give you another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. John, it's another Friday. It's another week that we didn't record as early in the week as I would have liked. But we actually have a reason today.
Yes, yeah.
And we've been talking a lot here in the office, obviously, about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And my instinct in these things has been immediately to talk, right?
Yeah, yep.
And I think you guys know that. And part of that was to race up here to the microphone and say something. And I resisted that temptation now for a couple of days. I needed a time to think about this and process this a little bit. And so here we are, not 48 hours after, but you know, a couple of days. And I'm ready to give some of my thoughts. I don't want this to just be kind of a generic therapy session. What is unique to Iowa in all of this? You know, there's an Iowa angle. So we'll talk about that today. But that's really what we're going to here to do is talk about this and what's happened, why, and where do we where do we go from here? So are you ready for that?
I
am. It's a little different, but yeah. I think it arches and so many other things politically. So anyway, that's where we're going today. I mean, any thoughts before we get started on all of that?
No, I think I think with a lot of our listeners I'm still kind of in shock about it. And we learned this morning that they finally captured the suspect, I guess. Yeah.
Great.
But it's just I'm honestly still kind of in shock.
One of the things that, because I've waited a couple of days, I think I can hopefully not respond out of as much emotion, as much anger, and try and see things for what they are. One of the things that I've noticed in talking to people, even here in the office, is I don't know that everyone out there understands how much of a significant figure Charlie Kirk really was inside of the conservative movement, and frankly in American politics in general. And I think it's a little bit generational too. And I don't know that there's a great correlation. We have many listeners who maybe have heard of Charlie Kirk, maybe just understand that he was a conservative activist or a conservative talking head, and that's about it. Because there are many, right? In our world, there's a lot of folks that have a podcast or appear on Fox News or whatever they are. But Charlie Kirk was very unique and had a following that really went far beyond what these other folks who talk for a living did. And so the main thing, I guess, is the founder of Turning Point USA and well known for speaking on college campuses. But talk about how significant he was beyond just being another conservative activist or commentator.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Charlie Kirk was what we'd call a movement conservative, and so he had started out by as sort of an entrepreneur creating Turning Point USA, and was an organization where he was recruiting students on college campuses, and this just basically took off, and there's chapters all across, and now it also includes in high schools. And so I was familiar with Charlie Kirk, but I wasn't necessarily following him or listening to his podcast, so I really didn't understand how influential he was. I mean, I knew he was an influential voice, but I mean, truly for college age, high school students and college age and sort of recent college graduates, I mean, Charlie Kirk was in a sense, I think a comparison would be sort of, I'll date myself, but maybe sort of how some conservatives came to being with Barry Goldwater.
Yeah.
Or even Ronald Reagan, or for me it was Pat Buchanan. I mean, Charlie Kirk was a voice that they listened to, they resonated with, and he spoke to what the things that they believed in. And then the other thing I didn't realize, just learning more about him, how influential he was just with members of Congress and just giving advice. There was an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal about how, he counseled J.D. Vance in his Senate run. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
And then also he was very much instrumental in activating the youth vote for President Trump, and just a tremendous organizer and very knowledgeable. I mean, not just an activist. I mean, he was an intellectual.
He really was.
Yeah.
And so I actually had grown to really appreciate a lot of his work. You see him in your Facebook, Instagram reels or whatever, and there's a lot of this where he would go to college campuses and sit down and draw large crowds, and folks would come up to the microphone and he would debate people. And I think one of the things that has really stuck here, and you've seen it reported in some areas, is that he wanted to debate, but he wanted to do it as about an exchange of ideas. And he talked about that repeatedly, that it's important. And then one of the reasons we have free speech is so that we can exchange ideas. And when we can do that, we actually avoid the violence that comes with it. It's when we stop talking to each other. And it is, the word is not ironic that ultimately his voice was silenced by somebody that didn't want to have to listen to it. And there have been folks on the left and the right who have spoken out. I actually saw a video last night, Bernie Sanders talking about, exactly that, is that we should exchange the ideas. It was actually about 3 minutes of it was really good. And then he started to equivocate about January 6th and the Minnesota speaker and this and that, which maybe we'll get into, I think are all deflections from what has happened here. But he wanted to debate. He wanted to exchange those ideas. And there are others on the right and the left that just want to yell. They want to yell louder. They want to tear down. And sometimes that is entertaining. But Charlie Kirk wanted to win on the idea. And that's important.
Yes, yeah.
And he was killed for that.
Yeah.
But these videos are popular. They get shared around, and he had an ability to, I'm sure he got angry at times with certain situations, but to really connect with people. To take a college student that says, hey, you'd see a video of him talking with someone who was trans and upset about it. And he would start with the humanity of it, is that, how he would put it, but there was always a faith angle to it, is that, you are valuable, you are loved, and all of that. And we're going to get to his faith later in this episode too, John. But I wanted to start the whole conversation by framing up that this importance of how he was to the movement is that you have an entire generation or more of folks on the right. And I'm not talking about conservative activists. It's anybody that's been politically minded that has come through college in the last 20 years. Well, not 20. Because, folks in their 20s that had been through college and looking back on it, but that were primarily influenced by Charlie Kirk and his movement and delivering the youth vote. But it is building, we've talked before about college campuses, John, and how there's a real unanimity of thought from the faculty. And he went in and pierced that.
Yes.
And said, let's talk about these ideas, and really had a lot of people look up to him and that movement. And so just because, listener, maybe you didn't see that part of it, just understand that he was chief among those commentators and truly had the ear of people at the highest levels of government. And they thought of him as a friend. They thought of him as a positive, caring influence, and he was silenced for that in front of his wife and two small children. And that's a tragedy. I don't care where you're at on the political spectrum.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's.
So I want to get into also the why. And John, I'm going to apologize in advance. These are going to turn into some monologues at times, but and I touched a little bit on this about that. this idea, and you're seeing folks that, well, the right does this too. It's not just the left. Well, that's true. There are violent actors at every point in the political spectrum. But it does seem like there is a troubling trend where violence has become mainstreamed in the far left. And kudos to those on the left end of the spectrum that are speaking out against this, because it cannot happen. But somehow that's become. Am I off base here, or it seems like, we're going to get the teacher in Oskaloosa, who was suspended for saying one Nazi down.
Yeah.
That's the response to a shooting. And that somehow, I would imagine that him and the folks that he talks to, that was just a mainstream opinion.
Yeah.
That was acceptable to say that because Charlie Kirk was so far out of the mainstream that it's okay to say that. And that's when I'm talking about the mainstreaming of this violence and this rhetoric. Do you have a thought on that?
No, I think you're right, because I mean that we saw numerous examples, and I think you're right. This happens on both sides, but this is getting to be a common thing, where we accuse, instead of maybe talking about the issue, we demonize the person by calling them a Nazi or a racist or a bigot or anti-Semite, whatever it may be, whatever the label may be, to try to demonize the situation, and that just turns up the temperature even more.
And I want to add on to that. I think you're right. But when you use the kind of rhetoric, and now here we're not just talking about the far left. How many times did we hear Nancy Pelosi calling everyone a fascist? Or did we see Joe Biden in front of the ominous red lights talking about these horrible people? I can't remember the exact terms he used. When you use this kind of incendiary language and you call them Nazis and fascists and threats to democracy. Oh, I mean, we've polled this. That was a principal line of attack in recent campaigns from the left.
Yeah.
You are telling people, you are using that language. You are if that is really the threat, you're making it acceptable to take a violent act against those people that you've identified that way. And I think that there's more than just not being civil or not allowing the free exchange of ideas. It's when you use the rhetoric at such an extreme instance to rile up your people, because that's what it is. When we talked about this in the last campaign, John, threats democracy, fascism, Nazi, those are to rally your troops. Those are to motivate them to get out and vote. But unfortunately, it's also motivated at least a few of them to do even more, which is to normalize the violence.
That's absolutely right.
And listeners, if we've got folks on the left listening to this, hear me when I say, if there are folks on the right that need to hear that message too, I'm all in. It just seems that in recent history, it's coming from the left. Do not equate this with the speaker in Minnesota, which was a left-wing Tim Walz friend, and that went and shot that. I'm not saying that is not a tragedy, but don't try and tell me that's a Trump supporter. There is a problem in the far left with violence, and we need to call that out, and the folks on the left need to call it out too. That's one of my key takeaways from all this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that, and I thought the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, has really done a good job in the press conferences and sort of kind of his messaging, kind of echoing some of the similar things, and this is not. I mean, this rhetoric is really getting out of hand, and we saw this especially in the last presidential election, where they were using that as a prime message.
And I think that the end of this, you've certainly seen it with the messaging against President Trump, that created the idea that Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, the folks on the right that are part of the new conservative movement are so dangerous. Their ideas and their words are so dangerous that we have to get rid of them. Now, I believe that most mainstream Democrats believe that is done at the ballot box. Some of them believe it's done with lawfare and taking it to the courts, which we also have a problem with. Mm-hmm. And now I believe we have this growing number of people on the left that think it needs to be done with violence. And that's a problem for a well-functioning society, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I'm not to diminish or raise this up over other violent acts that have happened, high-profile ones. Those are awful too. But what I'm talking about is, are we losing the ability to freely exchange ideas in this society? That's a real problem, because now you're eroding one of the most basic premises of democracy.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
You want to talk about threats to democracy?
Yeah.
I got your threat to democracy right here.
Getting rid of free speech and
that's fundamental to everything. There's another element too, is that this idea that's been brought up on the left, that words are violence. We've talked about this too, that those words are so hateful that they are violent among themselves. And I completely discount that entire notion, because that also leads you to bad outcomes. It's a little bit like, the counter-speech doctrine, John, that, the solution to speech you don't like is not to get rid of that speech. It is more speech. And that's a hallmark of a classic American principle as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I was looking at a survey yesterday where I think it's 1 in 3 college students surveyed on college campuses believe that it was okay to use acts of violence to stop a speaker they don't agree with. I mean, this is just getting out of hand, and that's something that you and I were talking about this yesterday. I mean, college campuses are supposed to be a place where you learn, you debate ideas, and not shut things down. And it just seems like the left is in favor of free speech until it's something they don't agree with.
Yeah.
And then they don't want it. They want it censored.
Liberal education. The word liberal there doesn't mean liberal on the political spectrum. It's the classical liberal notion of a variety of ideas and viewpoints. However, when it comes to politics, we have everything but liberal education inside of our colleges and universities. Something that you hopefully will be a part of coming up soon in the new initiative going on inside of the regions. And we'll talk about that. We have talked about it in future episodes. But we have to have that. If for no other reason, the left should want that to make them sharper and help defend their ideas. It was another thing that I saw in this Bernie Sanders video.
Yeah.
I didn't agree, but I would because I want my ideas to win.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to bring up, and I think a lot of people, especially maybe some Republicans and conservatives, but maybe some on the left would be very surprised when you look at the conservative movement, or even within Republican circles, there is a lot of internal debate. As you and I,
yeah.
I mean, just if someone could see our coffee time, I mean, it's a healthy debate between different philosophies and how we view different policies. I mean, just one example, one of my very good friends is more libertarian, and we, it was Vance who spoke at our tax day. I mean, certainly as a doctrinaire free trader, and I oppose that idea, and so there is a lot of healthy debate within the conservative movement.
And both of those people and folks, and I think this is the case across a great much of the political spectrum, I might disagree what you have to say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it.
Yeah.
Has to be one of the cornerstones of American democracy.
That's right.
Has to be.
Yeah.
There are some things I mentioned earlier, John. I got a lot of different thoughts inside of this that I want to make, but we'll try and get around to them. But the folks, you see folks, the example I gave was the teacher in Oskaloosa, which said one Nazi down. There have been a lot of these you see them on social media of trying to elevate some of the more inflammatory, crazier things that have been said by folks that were celebrating or happy about the news that Charlie Kirk had died. And so this gets elevated. You've seen political leaders in Iowa trying to take it to the school board. Really, is this what you stand for? And this teacher's been put on leave. And they're going to have a special school board meeting to see what happens with that. I've seen a lot of, I know that Speaker Grassley had a very strong statement talking about this. Our teachers should not be saying these kinds of things. These are the people that we've trusted our children with. And if action's not taken at the local school level, he's going to use the House Government Oversight Committee to take a look at it. That was very well received, both by members of his caucus and many on the right. And I saw the Department of Education actually had a statement similar today that there's a way to do it. Obviously, teachers have a free speech right as much as anyone else, and we want to make sure that we support that. However, they also sign often in their contracts that they are going to, conduct themselves appropriately. So, that's another tough one. That's the working out of free speech in this country, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I think there is a boundary between, here's a political issue I have a viewpoint on, or I'm celebrating the assassination of a political figure.
Yeah.
I think those are two slightly different things.
Yes, yeah.
However, it is still free speech, but they are an employee in an environment where the words they say matters. There are things that you and I could say that probably would get us at least some demerits here by our employer if we said them inappropriately publicly,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So
yeah.
I think everyone has a responsibility to their employer, and given that they're in a position of public trust. We'll see how that ends up being worked. I mean, you have thoughts on any of that?
No, I think you're right, and there has to be a responsibility when it comes to speech. I mean, and to I think regardless of the position that anybody holds, what their occupation is, to write that is very irresponsible.
I think too. I've seen this across the country. You see some of these prominent X handles like libs of TikTok pointing out over and over teachers or public employees have said these certain things, and part of me appreciates that. Like, let's at least elevate it. If we're talking about counter speech doctrine, they want to say it. Fine, let's have it. Here's your idea. My idea is that you probably shouldn't kill people for saying things you don't agree with, but, you're also welcome to say what you want to say. But I think if the only thing that the conservative movement does is point out the crazy statements of people on the other side of the issue, I think we've missed the point. That will not be, that's not the message I think that Charlie Kirk and the conservative movement stood for. And I don't think it does anything. I used the example this morning. I think all we're doing is mowing the weeds.
Yeah.
Not pulling them out by the root. The problem is what makes people think that it's okay. There's something in there where there is an environment where it's okay to say one Nazi down. The man was killed live, and that's your response. And to have that be that prevalent, we've got to think about what it is as a society that's okay, before we think about chasing down every misstatement, because everybody said something stupid on social media at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right? So, and I mean, I guess that comes kind of full circle to what is the takeaway of all of this? What is the response of America? What is the response? Because I'm going to, here, at risk of being too dramatic, and I as we kind of move into the what's next part of this, or what's the takeaway, John, I think this is a significant moment in American history. I think he was a significant enough figure, this is high profile enough, and impacted the way people think about politics, that I think this is actually one of those moments in time that will move American history and definitely our politics. And I don't know how or what yet. And we got to figure out what that is. And if it is, well, it's all of us. What do we want to that change to be? What do we want that impact to be? There's that answer for the future of our country, but there's that answer for the conservative movement. What do we want out of this? It doesn't sound right, but what should be the lasting legacy of Charlie Kirk? What should be the takeaway from him being, frankly, martyred for this? And I want to, let's spend a few minutes and think about what that is, because we have talked about it a little bit in a 48-hour pre-production meeting.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I agree, first of all, with your point, and I don't know what the ramifications will be of this incident. I think you're absolutely right. This is a transformational event that will have an impact on our politics. Now, one thing I did hear from, and I shared this the other day, is Ari Fleischer, who is a speechwriter for former President George W. Bush, and he was being interviewed, I believe, by Laura Ingraham on Fox News, and he basically said that he thought it would be a good idea that all colleges should immediately have what he called a Charlie Kirk lecture, where they would invite speakers on campus to have debate, because that's what, as you said, that's what Kirk wanted.
Yeah.
He wanted the exchange of ideas. He wanted ideas debated. He wanted people to be challenged in their ideas, to be thinking about different things. And so I think that's one legacy. I don't know if that'll happen, but I mean, I think that's one thing that he certainly stood for in terms of an outcome that he would like to maybe see would be, free speech. I mean, he was, this was a major, major thing that he stood for and eventually died for. So I think that's one factor is, what, as a nation, are we gonna further entrench kind of behind our walls of hatred or ideology, whatever you want to call it, and then, or are we going to, kind of?
I think that, well, I know what you're saying, John.
Yeah.
I think that I think the warrior side of us wants to go fight the battle, because I'm mad they killed our leader or one of our leaders. Let's go fight. Well, okay, but what does that look like? And I think that let's just double down on the exchange of ideas. That's what I come back to, is reject the fear and commit. Did you see this bit from Ben Shapiro?
No,
there was a rumor that he was going to cancel all his college visits. He's like, no, and he used some vulgarities. He's like, no, I'm in, and we're all in, and is just keep speaking and be unafraid. I think that's got to be a big part of the solution I'm sure there are folks on the right that, call to arms or what, and I guess I reject that.
Yeah.
I think we should all be galvanized to speak more, and we should remind ourselves that we are doing it, and as often as possible, to try and be winsome. Is that, yes, you may tell somebody something they do not like. They hear it as hateful. They hear it as, but you got to say it. You say what you believe. You do it in love as much as you can.
Yeah.
But we have to commit to that. That is American. It's who we are. It's how we want to be. We have to continue to aspire to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. So I think that's one of my main takeaways of this.
I think what you said, kind of brings up another thing about Charlie Kirk, and that was his faith. And I think and this is one thing I didn't really know about him, because like I said, I didn't really follow him, but I mean, he was a devout Christian. He was a devout believer, and when I heard one interview with there was a gentleman that was being interviewed on I believe his Newsmax I was watching, and this was an older man, and basically said how Charlie had counseled him in faith, and so just reading different things, a lot of people have commented how he shared his faith in Christ and shared that with other people, and often said that in his various speaking engagements. So, and I think when you said, we have to speak in truth and love, and I think that's what he did. And sometimes people don't like it. I mean, even Jesus said, the word divides, but I think Charlie did that in love.
I think that's right. There's no question that he was a Christian, who's a believer, and was asked, time to time I've seen clips of, what happens if you are killed or shot or something. And, he said, his response to that was always the Christian message of Jesus and eternal life. I was trading emails right before we went on air, John, with someone we've done some work with nationally who did a lot of work and knew Charlie Kirk very well. And sharing with him, I didn't know that, and shared with him that, this was awful. And that at a personal level, that at least his Christian witness, was intact. And I want to get your take on this because he said, it's not too dramatic. He called him the greatest American Christian martyr. And I want to get your take on that.
Wow, that's
because that's a big statement.
It is, yeah.
Because you're our historian here, so you're going to be the one that I go to for this. And maybe it's a little bit of a stretch to call him a Christian martyr, because I think he was killed for his politics, but there also was a lot of overlap between his politics and his faith.
Yeah.
So, those sometimes overlap too.
Yes, yeah. I honestly don't know how to respond to that. I mean, I do think, from what I know, that faith was a big part of his life, and from the testimonies that we're seeing, a lot of people are saying that he was sharing his faith and counseling people in faith. So I do think that was a big part of his life and a big part of who he was. So, that's a hard one. I mean, I can see how people can say that, but I mean, definitely a martyr. I mean, definitely. I mean, it's hard to do this because it's just such a shocking event,
right?
And I don't know how else to describe it, because it's.
And you, as a student of history, sometimes you need time to be able to understand the historical significance of something, to let it sink in.
Yeah.
That may be premature. We may need to absorb that as a culture to figure out where this sits in there. But I do think it is the fact that we even have that conversation, I think, underscores the significance of this event.
Yes, yeah.
When an NFL football stadium stops and has a moment of silence, when Major League Baseball teams stop and have the New York Yankees stop and have a moment of silence that transcends politics and goes straight to our culture, that the everyday American that really doesn't want to pay attention to politics is paying attention to this one.
Yes.
And that person, whether he was killed for his politics or something he'd said or said something to the wrong person, but inside of that, without question, was wrapped up inside of his Christian worldview and who he was. And part of it absolutely is martyrdom. And that carries with it a whole bunch of other things.
Yes.
Which are out. We will let others unpack that for us, John. But I guess that the long and the short of it is, this is a significant moment in American history that will not be forgotten. It will be one of the ones that sticks with us for a while, even in this 24-hour news cycle culture that we have. For example, yesterday was the 24th anniversary of 9/11, and for the first time in my memory, that wasn't the thing that everyone was talking about that day.
Yes, yeah, absolutely right.
For 23 other years, everyone came in and talked about 9/11.
Yes.
Where they were, what it meant, all of that. Yesterday it got mentioned, but everyone in America was talking about Charlie Kirk instead.
Yeah.
And I think that shows you what this is about. So, do you have anything else you want to share before I try and land the airplane here?
No, I do have one more thing, and this is, I think, is something that the governor of Utah had said in one of the press conferences, and I just think it's some good advice, and that is, he said, and there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that was, don't watch the video.
No.
And the governor said, let's take some time. Let's step away from social media.
Yeah.
And let's And I think a lot of times the social media platforms, I'm not blaming that, but this makes it so easy to get into that kind of rhetoric.
I agree with that.
I'll just use an example. I had that article where I was comparing the leadership of our governor with Margaret Thatcher, and there was all kinds of not just comments directed towards me, but also to the governor, just hateful stuff. Yeah. And I don't care if people disagree with my arguments. That's completely fine. But
that's all you're used to that.
Yeah, yeah. But to call me a stupid or other worse things, it is not pleasant.
No, it's not.
But I also know we live in a fallen world, and we have a serious cultural problem that
I think that's a good piece of advice, is check yourselves that you're not getting too wrapped up in the political messaging ecosphere, and that is absolutely equal opportunity across the political spectrum. There are folks that live it. They are constantly inundating themselves with political news, political commentary. Some of that's appropriate. Get yourself educated up on it, but make sure that you have balance in your life. That you are investing in the people around you and your community and your family and all of those things, which frankly should be the foundations of American society, not just social media and getting yourself ramped up on political messaging, because much of it is simply for entertainment value and media clicks and all of that. Politics matter, government matters, the future of this country matters, and we will continue to talk about them and advocate for the things we believe in. But let's make sure that we're not getting ourselves too ramped up. And I guess I maybe my final takeaway is one, the message that he largely delivered. There's probably comments he's made that I don't agree with. I think there's probably pieces of tax policy Charlie made that I don't agree with. That's okay. He probably would have thought that was okay too.
Yeah.
But the message that I think he truly wanted everyone to hear was salvation through Jesus Christ. So I hope everyone would take a time to consider that. And that all of us need to, at least from my standpoint, not be scared to speak. Continue to speak what you know, what you believe in. Share those ideas. Do it in love, and commit to having the most fundamental American value, which is the free and fair, the free exchange of ideas.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's go to where we're not no more call to arms. And I get it. There, in many ways, there is a spiritual battle here but maybe I'll save all of that for another day, John. Just let's make sure that we're doing it the right way, and win on ideas.
Yeah. Next week, September 17th is Constitution Day, and
we haven't had enough runway to lead up to this, John. I'm sorry.
No. But I mean, what a perfect time to remind ourselves about the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights.
Yep. It's important. These things are there for a reason. Yeah. They're important. So be curious. What other folks think. I'm sure we have folks out there that are going to think that we missed the mark here today, John. And again, this is the best I could do 48 hours in. There are folks that, we got to fight. These people are out for us. We got to fight back. I'm not being dismissive of that idea, but I'm also telling you that that's not, I think, the way that Charlie Kirk himself approached politics. There are folks that are going to want to say, you know what, you were too hard on the left and not hard enough on your own side. I will interact with that. I will consider that. I also think that many of the examples given on violent acts on the right don't match up with things like Steve Scalise and Charlie Kirk and on and on. But that's fair too. But you know what? It's a beautiful thing in all that. We're going to have that conversation. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And because I think that's what we should do. But if I didn't get it quite right, okay, let me know. We'll have that conversation. That's what we're here to do.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And this is I have to say this has probably been the hardest podcast we've done.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to talk about, and it's just I'm still just shocked by it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've said that before, but it's just I don't know.
Yeah. It's we don't want to have these conversations. We want to have a back and forth on the appropriate levels of taxation and government spending and working out that tension point, right?
Yeah.
That would be ideal if that's the only thing we had to worry about.
Or trade or...
Yeah, and those things continue to be very important, and we have to. That is our mission. I mean, I heard someone interviewing Charlie Kirk about, well, my vocation, what I was put here to do as a believer is to do politics. I couldn't go be a missionary someplace. That's not who I am. I mean, we were put here to talk about tax policy, John. That's our, but that is our vocation. That's our job. And so we're going to continue to do that. But we do have these other things we care about as well, and they impact policy, they impact politics, and so we will talk about them. Mm-hmm. But and we're going to continue to do that. Yeah. But it is difficult.
It is. Yeah.
And we'll work through it, and everyone will work through it. So thanks for indulging us, John and I, as we kind of do this out publicly on our thoughts on all this, but appreciate everyone tuning in today. Don't forget to like and John, you usually stop me before I'm actually in the middle of it all.
So sorry to interrupt your close, but I just want to say we did have a winner from our last,
that's right. Yes, I'm sorry.
Our trivia, and it was our one of our colleagues got the answer right, and so it was the question, if everyone remembers, who was the editorial cartoonist who was instrumental during the basically from the early 20th century up until World War II, and he was the editorial cartoonist for the Des Moines Register, and his name was Ding Darling, J. Darling.
Yep.
And so, and I have a question.
Did we have a winner?
Yes, yeah.
Who was it?
It was one of our colleagues.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I don't know if he wants me to say his name, so I won't.
Yeah.
But the question this week should be fairly simple. So we'll see. So next week, a major battle occurred in the American Civil War, and it was considered a turning point. And it occurred in September of 1862, and it was a turning point, changed the war aim for the Union.
Okay.
So that is our question.
With the understanding that your questions usually have an Iowa sort of theme to them, right? No, not necessarily.
This one, there may have. I don't know if there was any Iowa.
Okay.
I'd have to.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What was the date on it again?
This was September of 1862.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then our folks are going to have to dig into that one. All right. Well, good. We got trivia question. We got John's one more thing. We should turn that into a feature, John, the one more thing, and we could have a little jingle or something on top of it. So, all right. Well, thanks again for joining us, folks. Don't forget to share this with your friends if you think there's anything on here worthwhile, and give us the feedback when you think we missed the mark. We'd be happy to hear from you. So with all that having been said, we will see you next time on ITR Live.